Have you ever wondered, during the mysterious 18 years missing from the Bible, where did Jesus go? What did he do? And why does Scripture remain completely silent about it? This is not just a casual question, it is one of history's greatest enigmas. A silence that has fascinated scholars, theologians, and believers for centuries. And among the many theories that try to explain it, there is one so startling that it can change the way we see Jesus, that he may have once traveled to India, the land of Buddhism and ancient spiritual traditions. When we read the Gospels, we notice a strange gap. At the age of 12, Jesus is last mentioned debating with the elders in the Temple of Jerusalem. Then suddenly, nothing until he begins his public ministry around the age of 30. An 18-year silence, as if history itself has drawn a veil across his life. Did he simply live quietly as a carpenter in Nazareth? Or did he embark on a spiritual journey to the east, seeking wisdom in the lands of sages and monks? This is where surprising discoveries come into play. In the late 19th century, a Russian traveler named Nicholas Notovich visited Ladakh in northern India. While staying in a Tibetan monastery, he claimed to have found ancient manuscripts that told of a holy man from the West, known as Isa. The astonishing part, the descriptions of Isa bore uncanny resemblances to Jesus, his teachings, his compassion, and even his conflicts with religious authorities. According to those manuscripts, Isa spent many years in India, studying Buddhist philosophy, meditating on compassion, detachment, and the release from suffering. He was regarded by local teachers as an exceptional student, even preaching to ordinary people about love, justice, and equality beyond the boundaries of caste or creed. Does this sound familiar? It echoes almost word for word the gospel message that would later spread across the Roman world. Even more striking, one passage describes Isa openly challenging the Brahmin priests for enforcing strict social divisions. He proclaimed that before God, all human beings are equal. Centuries later, in Galilee, Jesus would say almost the same thing, that the Father's love is not reserved for the privileged few, but poured out for everyone. If these accounts are authentic, then the life of Jesus is not confined to Palestine alone. His story could stretch across deserts and mountains, reaching the heart of India and Tibet. He would not only be a teacher, rooted in the Jewish tradition, but also a spiritual master shaped by the wisdom of the East, particularly the philosophy of the Buddha. Think about it for a moment. Why do Jesus' teachings on forgiveness, mercy, and loving even one's enemies resonate so deeply with the Buddhist ideals of compassion, non-attachment, and overcoming suffering? Is it mere coincidence, or are we glimpsing the traces of a journey that has been hidden for centuries? The Catholic Church and mainstream Christianity have always rejected this possibility, arguing there is no historical proof that Jesus traveled to India. Yet the very existence of texts such as the life of Saint Isa, still preserved in monasteries of Tibet, continues to spark heated debates. And every time these records resurface, the uncanny similarities they reveal send chills down the spine of those who study them. If true, this hidden journey would forever change how we view Jesus, not only as the savior within Christianity, but as a universal, spiritual teacher whose wisdom transcends religious boundaries and cultural borders. It paints a portrait of a man whose light shone far beyond his homeland, a figure who belongs not only to one faith, but to all humanity. The story of Isa in the Tibetan manuscripts goes far beyond his studies of Buddhist philosophy. It describes a figure who traveled across India, visiting Hindu temples, Buddhist monasteries, and even mingling with the poorest villagers. Everywhere he went, he left a deep impression through words filled with compassion and a call for equality. One account says that when Isa witnessed the oppression of ordinary people under the caste system, he spoke boldly. God does not distinguish between the rich and the poor. Every soul is equally precious. Such a statement was shocking at the time, because Indian society was strictly divided by class. That same radical message also drew the anger of the Brahmin priests, who saw him as a threat to their authority. Another striking detail is that Issa was once arrested by local rulers for spreading dangerous teachings, only to be defended by crowds of villagers who refused to let him be silenced. It is almost impossible not to draw parallels here with the life of Jesus years later in Judea, where common people gathered around him, protected him, and clung to his words despite opposition from religious leaders. The question is impossible to ignore. How could two figures, separated by geography and tradition, experience such similar patterns? If this is mere coincidence, it is one of the most extraordinary coincidences in history. But if it is not coincidence, then perhaps these fragments are glimpses of a journey that truly took place. One passage even describes Issa spending several years in a Buddhist monastery, studying sacred texts, practicing meditation, and cultivating compassion. The manuscript claims these years shaped him into someone who not only preached, but also healed the hearts of the afflicted. When we place this image side by side with Jesus healing the sick and comforting the outcast, the resemblance becomes almost impossible to dismiss. What do you think about this theory? Could Jesus have actually set foot in India, learning from Buddhist teachers before returning to his homeland to plant the seeds of the gospel? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might open up new angles we haven't considered. And if this story intrigues you, don't forget to hit the like button. It encourages us to keep uncovering hidden mysteries like this one. What makes the mystery even more fascinating is that the story of Issa is not confined to a single monastery. Similar manuscripts have been reported in other Tibetan monasteries, though with slight variations in detail. This raises another provocative question. Could there have been an oral tradition, passed down for generations, about a holy teacher from the West that was eventually written down in different places? Of course, many scholars dismiss these accounts, arguing that they are fabrications or misunderstandings. They point out that these manuscripts were only revealed in the 19th century, and no early Christian source ever mentioned such a journey. For critics, this is clear evidence of a hoax. For believers, however, it might represent a lost chapter of history waiting to be rediscovered. No matter which side of the debate you lean toward, one thing is undeniable. The parallels between the teachings of Jesus and the philosophy of the Buddha are striking. Both speak of compassion, humility, love, and liberation from suffering. The ultimate question is whether these similarities arose independently or whether they were shaped by a real encounter between East and West, embodied in the journey of one extraordinary man. If the theory is true, it would completely reshape how we understand history. Jesus would not only be a Jewish teacher in the Roman world, but also a witness to the meeting of civilizations, a bridge between two spiritual traditions that, though oceans apart, may have been closer than we ever imagined. The deeper we go into the accounts of Issa, the more striking parallels we find with the life of Jesus in Palestine. One passage from the Tibetan manuscript states that Issa often emphasized, "Truth is not found in material wealth, but in a heart that loves and gives." When we read these words, it is impossible not to think of Jesus' words in the Gospels, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be." Also, such a resemblance has left many scholars admitting that if this was not cultural exchange, then it must be one of the most astonishing coincidences in history. The manuscripts also describe Issa clashing with religious leaders who had turned their laws into tools of control rather than pathways to compassion. He accused them of burdening people with empty rituals, while ignoring the true spirit of love. If we replace Brahmin priests in India with Pharisees in Judea, the picture becomes eerily familiar. Could it be that Jesus experienced such confrontations in the East before facing them again at home? Another unexpected detail is the claim that Issa not only taught, but also healed. He was said to have visited poor villages, laid his hands on the sick, and comforted the outcasts. This image mirrors almost exactly what we read of Jesus in the New Testament. And if these accounts truly predate the writing of the Gospels, we are left with a provocative question. Who influenced whom? Did Buddhist scribes adapt Jesus' story? Or did Jesus himself carry this Eastern wisdom back to his homeland? Modern researchers are divided. Some argue that Tibetan monks may have heard of Jesus through merchants and travelers along the Silk Road, then retold his story in their own way. Others suggest the opposite, that these texts preserve a genuine historical memory of Jesus' time in India. After all, trade routes between the Middle East and South Asia were already active in the 1st century, and it is not impossible that a young seeker from Judea could have made such a journey. Imagine for a moment Jesus sitting cross-legged in a monastery, meditating with Buddhist teachers, absorbing lessons on compassion, humility, and detachment. Then, years later, he returns to Galilee and teaches those same values in parables that would change the Western world. If true, this would not only expand the story of Jesus, it would redefine him as a bridge between two of humanity's greatest spiritual traditions. But here lies the dilemma. To accept this theory would challenge the very foundations of traditional Christian teaching. The Church has always affirmed that Jesus' wisdom came directly from God, not from human teachers of other faiths. This is why the idea of Jesus in India remains so controversial and is often dismissed as heresy by religious authorities. Yet, whether one believes the manuscripts are authentic or fabricated, the undeniable reality remains. The teachings of Jesus and the Buddha echo one another. Jesus says, "Love your enemies." The Buddha teaches, "Overcome anger with compassion." Jesus preaches forgiveness. 70 times 7. The Buddha reminds, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. At this point, the debate shifts beyond history into something more profound. Whether Jesus physically traveled to India or not, his message carries a universal truth: love, compassion, forgiveness, and peace. And perhaps this is the real mystery why across cultures and centuries, humanity's greatest spiritual teachers seem to converge on the same timeless path. When the theory that Jesus may have once traveled to India is brought up, the academic and religious worlds immediately split into two opposing camps. One insists this is valuable historical evidence, revealing a hidden chapter in Jesus' life. The other dismisses it as fabrication, the product of imagination or misinterpretation. But whether the story is fact or myth, no one can deny that it has opened up a new perspective, forcing us to ask again, who was Jesus, really? From a historical point of view, the idea of cultural exchange between East and West during that era is not far-fetched. The Silk Road had already connected Europe, the Middle East, and India for centuries, carrying not only goods but also philosophies, ideas, and beliefs. A young Jewish man, hungry for wisdom, could well have sought out the spiritual teachings of the East, and upon returning, planted the seeds of a message that transcended boundaries. From a spiritual perspective, the similarities between the teachings of Jesus and Buddhism cannot be ignored. Both call humanity toward compassion, forgiveness, inner peace, and the renunciation of hatred. Despite coming from different cultures, their messages converged at a single point. True salvation does not lie in power or possessions, but in a heart that loves unconditionally. And it is precisely this harmony that makes many believe, even if Jesus never physically set foot in India, the spirit of his teachings is deeply connected with Buddhism. Perhaps truth does not belong exclusively to one religion. Perhaps truth is like a great flame, kindled in different places, spoken in different languages, but radiating the same eternal light. When we place Jesus and the Buddha side by side, the distance between them dissolves. One came from the West, the other from the East, but both left behind a legacy of love and compassion for humanity. And maybe that is what God or the universe, or ultimate truth, wanted us to realize. that love transcends all boundaries. Today, as the world faces so much conflict, hatred, and division, their timeless teachings resonate more strongly than ever. The question is, are we willing to look beyond religious and cultural differences to see that we are all walking on the same path? Can we learn to forgive more, love more, and live in peace as both Jesus and the Buddha once taught? Perhaps this is the greatest message hidden within the theory of Jesus in India. It is not only a historical curiosity, but also a spiritual reminder for us today. And if you find this story thought-provoking, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a small gesture, but one that helps us continue sharing these fascinating spiritual mysteries with you. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe Jesus truly traveled to India? Or do you think it is nothing more than a legend? Leave a comment below. Your perspective will make this conversation richer, deeper, and more alive. Who knows, maybe through discussions like these, we might find new sparks of understanding that bring us closer to truth. Because sometimes, truth is not about whether something did or did not happen. It lies in what we learn from the story, and how we choose to live differently because of it.